Let's try and dig into the story just a little bit further and get Labour's perspective on A-levels. Joining us from Sunderland, the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Ms Phillipson, lovely to see you this morning. It is one of those days when we all start thinking back to getting our exam results and reminding ourselves of just how traumatic a day it can be, but spare a thought for the class of 2022 in the past couple of years that they've had to go through.
Absolutely. It's always a stressful and worrying time for young people as they collect their results. But this cohort of young people in particular have had a really hard time of it. We know how disruptive COVID has been to the life chances and opportunities for our young people. That's why Labour set out how we would do things differently and the support that they need to recover from all of that lost learning and development time. And I think it is appalling that fewer than 1 in 5 have received any additional catch-up support out of the government scheme. You know, we knew right at the start of the pandemic that we would need to support our young people. The government completely failed to put that in place. Labour set out how we would do things differently. But, first and foremost today, our young people have worked really hard, and I just want to congratulate them for everything that they've done, but also their teachers and all the support staff in schools. They've gone above and beyond to make sure our young people are supported, and they deserve a big thank you as well.
Yeah, they certainly do. In terms, though, of the way in which the results have been weighted, and of course we know last year when teachers were responsible, there was undeniably going to be a significant amount of grade inflation. Was this the right point at which to sort that out? Was this the right year, the right cohort of students to have to deal with, perhaps missing out on first choices, certainly not getting the exam results that they were perhaps predicted earlier on in the year? Is that entirely fair?
I think it is right that we do start to see a return to normality. And from the many young people that I've spoken to, they did want the opportunity to have exams. There are problems with teacher-assessed grades, as we've seen in the past and we saw last year, and we do need to avoid that. And I'll be looking carefully when we see more data later about hopefully we won't this year see the same disparity that we saw between private schools and state schools. So it is right that we start to move back. But if we're to do that, then we do have to properly support our young people and give them all of the help that they need, given the unprecedented nature of the disruption that they face to their education. That hasn't happened. And we know, of course, that some young people had more time out of education than others because of COVID outbreaks, and the government's total failure to put in place what was needed, I do fear will cast a long shadow over the life chances of many young people, not simply where it comes to today and the results that we will be seeing, but right across our economy too, because we know from the work that the government commissions, at Kevin Collins's work, that this will actually have a big impact on our economy where it comes to failure to see wages increase and tax revenue too. That's why we said it was right to invest in our children and young people's futures, to put in place a proper recovery plan to support them. And the government's failure on this, I think, is a big, big concern.
And of course, we wish everyone opening a letter or an email today all the very best of luck. But no doubt we'll have more to talk about in days to come once we've had the opportunity to go through the data. I do want to ask you, though, of course, we're just about to start a weekend of disruption in terms of the rail, bus, and indeed the tube network. A few minutes ago, I spoke to the RMT's Mick Lynch. I just wonder if I can just play you and our viewers what he said, and we'll come back to you in just 1 second.
Only the TUC can call a general strike. What we're seeing across the country, I addressed a meeting of thousands of people last night. I addressed a massive one in Glasgow on Tuesday. There is a wave of reaction amongst working people to the way they're being treated. People are getting poorer every day of the week. People can't pay their bills. They're getting treated despicably in the workplace. I think there will be generalised and synchronised action. It may not be in the traditional form, but we've seen the post office workers and BT, we've seen bus workers in London out on strike tomorrow and over the weekend. I think there is a massive response coming from working people because they're fed up with the way they're being treated.
Mr Lynch, responding there to a question I posed to him about the possibility of there being a general strike. He deferred decisions on that, of course, to the TUC. But from what he was saying and from what you and I can see, reading the newspapers and looking out our windows, there is an awful lot of dissatisfaction. There is going to be an awful lot of industrial action. Do you feel that we might well be heading in the direction of a general strike?
Well, I sincerely hope not, but of course it is within the gift of the government to try and sort this out. But, we've got real strikes today, and we have a Secretary of State who hasn't lifted a finger to do anything about it, who hasn't taken the responsible and sensible approach in seeking to get a compromise. I mean, why you have strikes, that's because you failed to get a compromise that you can all live with. And of course, working people are facing massive pressure right now on their living standards. That's why Labour has said we would make sure that energy bills are frozen and we pay for that through a windfall tax on oil and gas producers. And when I speak to people both here in Sunderland and right across the country, you're confronted with parents who are telling me that they're skipping meals in order to make sure their children don't go without. Pensioners who had turned off their heating months ago because they're so worried about how they're going to pay the bills. So in that context, I do understand how frustrated many workers are that they've got a government that isn't prepared to support them, whether that comes to energy bills or where it comes to actually seeking to get a compromise on pay. And we've seen that both right across many areas of our public sector, whether that's schools as well as rail, but also in the private sector too, where people are finding it really, really tough at the moment.
Sure, but surely it is somewhat paradoxical that a time in which you quite rightly say so many people, particularly those most disadvantaged, are having a really, really tough time of it at the moment. The Labour Party lost nearly 100,000 of its members last year and ended the 12 months £5 million in the red. I mean, what does it say if we are seeing industrial unrest on a scale such as this, if we are seeing poverty on the scale that we are, that people are leaving rather than flocking to the Labour Party?
We will always see fluctuations in our membership, but Labour was founded.
Sorry.
At different points in the cycle, but Labour as a party was founded to represent the interests of working people across our country. That's what we're about. That's why I joined the Labour Party, to make sure we see a fairer society and better life chances, both for our young people that we're talking about today, but workers too. We're on a much stronger and more sustainable footing now as a party. We're looking outwards to the country. We're ready to give Britain the fresh start that it needs under Keir Starmer. I think if you look at the current government, however, although frankly it often feels like we don't have a government, they're not able to take any kind of big decisions. They're a zombie government arguing amongst themselves, not looking outwards. The Labour Party, we are looking outwards to the country about the challenges we face, putting forward practical solutions like freezing energy bills to give people the help that they need.
Ms Phillipson, you're talking a good game there, but you're losing 100,000 members at a time of almost unprecedented industrial unrest does speak to problems within the party. Some might suggest the somewhat confusing lines being taken by the Labour Party as regards the strike, as regards being on the picket line. I mean, would you, Constance, standing next to Mick Lynch on an RMT picket?
Well, I'll not be on a picket line today because I'll be off visiting a school in the northeast this morning to meet with our young people getting their results. But I want to be a part of the next Labour government, and if we are to be that next government, then we'd be sat around the table seeking to get a solution to all of this. So we'd be involved in trying to get an agreement, get people around the table. You look at the current government, they're not interested in that. They just want to stoke that division, cause problems, and actually see the strikes continue. It feels to me like they desperately want those strikes to go ahead. I don't want strikes to happen. I mean, they represent a failure when you get to that point. Workers know that, trade unions know that. They would always want to get a compromise. But you've got a government that's completely unwilling to listen and is not able to take decisions at the moment. So it's little wonder that workers are really, really fed up when they've got these massive gas and electricity bills falling on them, where they face an unprecedented squeeze on their wages over these last 12 years of Conservative governments, because it's not just the recent months. Of course, there's additional pressures. Many of our staff, whether that's in schools or in the NHS, have had a massive squeeze on their wages over that time, and they're working harder than ever. They deserve a government on their side. Labour will always make sure we properly support the people on whom we depend. We praised them during the pandemic, we clapped for them, and now the government's just totally abandoned them.
Bridget Phillipson, great to have you on the programme as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.